I want to welcome everyone to the podcast tonight. It is 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time on February 29th, 2024. And this is a podcast which may be the first of a series, but we are experimenting right now. And this podcast is about YouTube channel cockatoos and cockatoos in general. We're actually going to cover more than just cockatoos. We're going to be speaking about all kinds of parrots that are your pets, part of your family. And the main purpose of this podcast is to not only introduce these two channels to you, the Rebecca Stout channel, which features Ani Cockatoo, and the Buster the Cockatoo channel, which features Jennifer Paget. And we're going to get to know these channels. But in speaking about their channels and their pets, we're also going to mention some other YouTube channels for the birds. And what I hope to accomplish is that anyone who has a cockatoo and is thinking of expanding their family, or doesn't have a cockatoo and is thinking of expanding their family into cockatoos, perhaps this podcast will help clue you in to some of the details you may not know ahead of time. And with that, why don't I formally introduce my guests and their channels. My first guest tonight is Rebecca Stout, and that is also the name of her YouTube channel.
Hello.
The star of her YouTube channel is Ani Cockatoo, Onni. We're going to get to his name in just a minute. My second guest is Jennifer Paget, who has a menagerie of her own. And the name of her channel, if you're going to do a search, is Buster the Cockatoo, Buster, just the way it sounds. And Rebecca is one B, two C's, Stout. First of all, let me say welcome, Rebecca.
Hi.
Welcome, Jennifer.
Hello.
Now, as you folks are talking to me, do either of you have a bird on your shoulder at this time?
No, I do not.
I do not either.
Okay.
Usually,
I
my
have a
cockatiel Sonny would be sitting with me, but he's kind of napping in his cage right now.
yeah, mine are in bed. I have a dog next to me right now, but mine are all in bed.
Buster is in bed.
All right.
hmm
We're gonna
Yeah,
we're gonna
I have
Okay.
a pretty strict routine on that.
Ani's also in bed. He went down at 6 o'clock.
well, Jennifer, we're gonna talk about that because all of these parrots seem to do better when they have a regimen. They're creatures of habit and they respond better when they have a routine that they can count on. But we'll circle back to that later. What is Ani? Where did that name come from?
It's quite a silly story. We thought when we got Ani that his personality would jump out at us because when we've seen them online, they seem to have these bigger than life personalities. And we brought him home and he was just a 4-month-old chick and he had no personality yet. So he's sitting there looking like this marshmallow. And I didn't know. I thought, what if I name him Caesar and he turns out to be a goof? And what if I name him Goofy and he turns out to be this majestic creature? So we were really stuck and we were going over names and we could not agree on a single one. Scott finally had said, blurted out Onyx, to which I looked at him and said, that's a black stone. And to defend himself, he said, well, his eyes are black. I'm done. So I sat there and said, we're going to compromise and we'll call him Ani. And it just turned out that Ani is Finnish for luck and happiness. It's a common boy's name. And that's kind of what he is all about, is luck and happiness. That's what I feel he brings to us all.
And what kind of cockatoo is Ani?
He is an umbrella cockatoo from the Indonesian islands.
And that's one of the largest cockatoos, correct?
Yes, people get confused and think that they come from Australia, but they don't. They're critically endangered in the rainforests of Indonesia.
There are cockatoos that do come from Australia and New Zealand, but
Yes,
not the umbrellas.
right.
And Jennifer, how did Buster get his name?
So when we got Buster, I was totally out of name, which I won't mention the name, but it was just like an ordinary old-fashioned gentleman's name that he didn't know. He definitely didn't know his name. So we kind of started mulling around names, and we were watching Arrested Development at the time, and my husband said he sounds like Buster on Arrested Development when he
Mm.
goes, mother. And kind of how Buster on Arrested Development kind of mumbled about. That's how. So anyway, my husband named him, and he's been Buster ever since.
What kind of cockatoo was Buster?
Buster is also an umbrella cockatoo.
And how did you two discover each other?
I personally don't really remember outside of me seeing her comments underneath my videos, and I'm not sure how we got in contact directly after that. That's all I remember.
Yeah, so there were a few other cockatoos I followed. I don't remember ever seeing Ani's videos until after I acquired Buster. And that's when I remember, and I started kind of, commenting under her videos and such. And then I reached out to her, I want to say a couple years ago, and asked her if she would be interested in doing a live together. For
Yeah.
me, some of the things that Rebecca shares on her channel are also really important to me because I believe it helps keep cockatoos in a home and not being rehomed so many times. And that's how we had a live together, I want to say 2 years ago. And then we started talking more frequently after that.
And how did you acquire Buster?
I answered an ad on Craigslist is where I found him.
Were you actively looking for another pet, or was just a circumstance where you saw this ad on Craigslist and you said, this might interest me?
So, we lived in Southern Ohio, and my husband found a new job. We moved here, and I had to give up. I had a homestead, a mini homestead, and we had had birds before. And I had told him, since I have to give up my ducks, my chickens, everything, my little farm, I want to get a parrot again. And I really wanted an African gray and a cockatoo. I was mostly looking for an umbrella, but I did acquire about a couple different cockatoos, but I can't explain it. They didn't feel right. And the minute I read Buster's ad, it just felt right. And that's how it came to be. So, and it
So,
was right, just maybe more for my husband,
so when
not
you
me.
when you acquired Buster, you knew pretty much what you were getting into because of your experience.
Well, I had never owned a cockatoo. I did. We did have a macaw, but I mean, I felt at the time I knew what I was getting into. But to be honest, just in my opinion, you never really quite know what you're getting yourself
Nothing,
into
nothing can
with a
can
cockatoo.
nothing can prepare you. You can read and
Hmm.
research all
Hmm.
you want. My husband did. I mean, my husband and I did. And we thought we knew it all about them. And we even had one prior to Ani that was a sweetheart. And we thought, well, we know how to do this. And we got Ani, and just nothing prepared us for a male umbrella cockatoo, or I should say a typical cockatoo. Tika was being all sweet and loving everybody. That's less common than what we're seeing with Ani and Buster. They're big personalities, and they're full of it.
I originally discovered your channel, Rebecca, about 8 years ago. It was a video on YouTube, long before the days of high definition. And having cockatiels all my life, I had done a search on YouTube for cockatiels so that I could play these videos for my birds, see if I could keep them entertained. And I discovered Sunny, the extraordinary cockatiel, or cockatiel extraordinaire, I think it was.
Yes.
And the very first video I found was Sunny on your dining room table with a pair of budgerigars. Sunny took a few steps towards I guess it was a Gotham's cockatoo named
Uh-huh.
Tika. And Tika was wearing a lampshade, but Tika preceded Ani, correct?
Yes.
Tell me the sequence about that.
We wanted a normal parrot. Something more manageable, like an Indian ringneck. And we went to a pet store to order an egg, per se. And we got in there, and as I was talking to the owner, Scott shows up with this big white bird on his arm. And I had already studied cockatoos and knew they don't make good pets. And I sat there and said, no, no. Well, he wouldn't let us leave. 2 hours later, he finally got me to say yes. And we brought Tika home. She got something that's we see all too much in pet cockatoos, in that she got plucking, and then she got into a mutilation syndrome that was impossible to break the cycle. And she had to have those collars on so that she didn't pick. She had actually picked a hole to her crop at one time and almost died. As time went on, she could reach anything, her feet, and then we had a double collar on her, and it was inhumane. We went to 2 vets around locally and then to the University of Tennessee to try and help her. And there was no help to be had. So we had to let her go.
And how long between Tika and Ani was it?
A year to 18 months. I'm not sure.
You acquired Ani from a breeder, I guess, up in New Jersey.
Yes.
Tell me about the store.
It's called Bird Paradise. It's the largest bird store in America, actually, right there in Burlington, New Jersey. We had been searching for a cockatoo that did not already have a biting problem and was not plucking, because we couldn't go through that heartbreak again with the plucking. We had looked, Scott had looked for, I don't know how long, a lot longer than me, and I looked for 6 months, and we could not find anything within driving distance. Finally, I went home to New Jersey, or we did, to visit our families, and we went into Bird Paradise just for fun because they let you play with the babies. And Ani was sitting on top of a cage in the midst of all these other parrots and all these other cockatoos, and we just knew it was him. And so that's how we came across Ani.
And he drove all the way back from New Jersey to Tennessee?
Yeah. After 24 hours of thinking about it, because I was strong and I was able to say no at first. But nighttime came and I could not get him out of my mind. So we were there first thing in the morning to go get him before somebody else did.
I probed this story because this is very much the kind of thing that happens in real life to a lot of people who end up with birds. There are other stories that we'll get to later on in the podcast about some of the other YouTube channels where these people are actually active rescuers who will rehome birds in their own home who have been mistreated elsewhere. But your story is a little bit different, and yet your story is probably more typical of the kind of person who's going to go into either a pet store or a dedicated parrot store and purchase a bird retail.
Yeah.
I wanted to get that out because those are the emotions and the indecision that's typical of the purchase process.
I wish it
Oh,
wasn't so. We wanted to adopt so bad. That's why it took so long. I wanted to give a homeless baby a home, and because I know they get bopped around and I know they live so long. But when we saw Ani, we just knew.
Jennifer, when you brought Buster home, you already had other pets, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Mhm.
What was the dynamic when you brought Buster home? First of all, how many pets do you have? What are they?
Well, at that time, because it's coming up on 5 years, we had 5 dogs. We still have 5 dogs, but we've lost one since then. And I had an African gray named Maybe, and which she has a big story all in herself. And she was very old and she passed away a couple years ago. But we had Maybe, and we had, Max, Buddy, Charlie, Izzy, and Daisy are our dogs. So something I learned, but growing up around livestock and such, is you never just turn animals out to each other. So we were very careful. I felt some of the videos I go back and watch, though, I really question myself. But for the most part, we were very careful about how we took steps to introduce them so that a dog didn't get their nose bitten off. And, actually, my granddogs lived here at the time, too, Nigel and my grandpug, Meemaw. He doesn't really meet a stranger, so He was ready to take over the minute he came into the house. And honestly, the dogs really respect him. They can be quite frightened of him at times. So he is definitely the top of the
Yeah, he
chopping block,
rules
I
the
guess.
roost, I've
He
noticed.
roos the
Well,
roost. Yes,
well, Buster
he's the
spends
boss.
an awful lot of time on the floor, which is where the dogs are. So
Hmm.
that's an interesting dynamic that you typically don't see, especially on the other YouTube channels where the birds are either on someone's shoulder all the time, but they're rarely on the floor. First of all, how old was Buster when you acquired him?
So I was told a certain age, and I don't even really remember what age, but I I don't really believe that he was as young as what they said, which is a common thing when you acquire a bird. Often don't You're not told the whole truth, in my experience anyway. But I know he's an adult male cockatoo because of behaviors, hormone seasons, and such. So all I really know is that Buster is an adult male cockatoo.
And Rebecca, when you brought Ani home, you of course had to deal with Sonny again,
Yeah.
sharing you with another bird, a bird that he did not know. And I'll get back to his relationship to Ani in just a second, but I want you to introduce the rest of your menagerie.
Before I had Ani, I had everything from a Brazilian short-tailed possum to crickets to just anything you can imagine, chipmunks, ferrets. Ani's such a handful that as animals left us, we did not get any more. So as of today, we're stripped down to Sunny the cockatiel. I have two axolotls. I have a crested gecko, a royal or ball python, spider morph, and also a bearded dragon. And I think that's it. And oh, there's Scott. I
Okay.
forgot the biggest one,
Okay. Well,
my husband.
you get an occasional visitor, don't you? Chet has a pet.
Yes, he brings in a golden retriever, and so he's part of the family. He's our grand dog, is what we call him.
And how does the dog relate with Ani?
Not good. Um, Golden retrievers can be really sweet, or their nature can take over in that they're a bird dog. And so he would try to eat Ani if he could, and Ani doesn't seem to like him much either because he feels he's not liked or
Now, assume for both of you that many of your pets, in particular the dogs, socialize with all the humans in your family, but cockatoos and some other parrots can actually be quite partial to just one member of the family. Jennifer, what's the situation with Buster?
So I got Buster because I wanted a cockatoo. Um, and he actually, and initially he was great with all of us. And then and then people ask me often how, like, what transpired, and I really don't know. I don't remember exactly the time, but it just suddenly there was this shift where he took to Ken, and then they just have this bond now. And Buster started calling Ken Dad on his own. I called him the whistling man because my husband Ken can whistle like birds. So it sounds you half the time you don't know who's really whistling. And we called him the whistling man. And then Buster just started calling him Dad. Now I want to believe that Buster loves me a little bit because he calls me Mama. But and once he bonded with Ken, there was a shift in the way he behaved with me. And so I am assuming he understands that I love Ken and that he has it's like a jealousy thing and he wants all of his attention. Whether he really thinks and knows he's father figure, I don't know, but I know he does see us or knows us as by those names.
I would encourage the people listening to this podcast to dial in your channel and watch carefully the dynamics between you and Buster and how it changes the moment Ken comes home from work with his lunch pail and Buster runs over and Ken does the finger thing and Buster grabs Ken's finger, and it's a whole different dynamic. And yet when Ken is not around, I can tell, I do see signals that Buster adores you, just in a different way. You are a provider
I,
of entertainment for him with all the toys that we're going to talk about later on. The dynamic at the Stout house is also male centric. Ani is kind of glommed onto Scott, but Ani's relationship with you can occasionally take a dangerous turn, unlike with Jennifer.
Yeah. Um, it started out that he loved everybody, just like Buster. Then he
Now remember,
started,
he's coming home from New Jersey
yeah,
as a juvenile. So the
right.
hormones haven't kicked in, and this is a whole new environment for him. He has no other exposure before. He's
He's going to
enjoying
have a good
everybody's
honeymoon
attention. He
period.
hasn't made a choice yet of who is his owner.
Well, we didn't know that. We thought we were lucky. We thought he's just going to love everybody because Tika was unusual in that she did love everybody. And I was under the impression that we did that. I thought it's all in how you raise them, and it's not. They're their own person and they have instincts. And Ani whittled us down one by one until he was mostly bonded with Scott. He can get aggressive with Scott sometimes, but nothing like with me.
But when Scott comes home from work, it's just the same as it is with Buster. Ani will drop whatever he's doing and go down the
Yeah,
staircase to meet Scott.
right. And to talk to him and tell him all the naughty things I've done all day.
For folks watching Rebecca's channel, if you find a lot of her older material with the early Ani videos, you will see the bird interact with everyone in her family, Chet and Sean, Rebecca and Scott, and it's really a joy to behold. Now it's very polarizing. The later videos of Ani as he goes through puberty, it's a very different dynamic now. Does
Yeah, it's
Ani
very
still do
different.
happy feet?
Yes, he still does that.
All right, we'll talk about that when we get to the pet behaviors. The common denominator is that these birds require a lot of attention. And later on, when we talk about other channels featuring the larger cockatoos, if you look at those other channels, the common theme, without exception, is that all these birds demand a lot of face time during the day, every day. Because if they don't get it, they start getting behavioral issues, just like if you had a little child and
Right.
if you ignored the child and left the child alone for a day, the child's going to develop behavioral issues.
That's exactly correct.
I want to reiterate really, no matter how much you think, even by listening to us this evening, tell you, you're not going to be prepared for what it takes. And I'm not saying that in any way to be rude to anyone or that, but I can't even explain to you in words correctly how much time, energy that you have to spend with them. And that doesn't mean that it can't happen. Obviously, we make it work, but
Yeah,
it is a lot. And
you're
you're going to give
absolutely
up a
right.
lot. You're going
Yeah.
to give up a lot. We can't even hardly go away for a few days because Buster doesn't want to drink water without Ken feeding it to him. And that's a true story. So,
Yeah, I
but
forgot
maybe we
about
can.
that.
Mhm.
I forgot about not giving up vacations or any time away because you can't, they're large parrots and they need large cages. You can't haul around a large cage to a hotel. Never mind the fact that they scream and you can't have that around people. So yeah, and it's hard to find somebody that will take care of them while you're away. And like you
Or knows
said,
how to.
Buster, you can't even do that.
Is it safe to say that the larger cockatoos, perhaps anything larger than agafans, is a bad choice for a first parrot, for someone who doesn't have experience with parrots?
I think it's a
Absolutely.
horrible decision. Yeah.
I agree.
Would you both have cockatiels? Jennifer, you've got a cockatiel of your own right now, Percy.
Hmm.
Actually, I thought we heard him 5 minutes ago. I thought I heard him behind you while you were talking. And you have Sunny, of course, Rebecca. These are birds. Cockatiels are probably a better choice for someone who has no experience with parrots
And
before.
what's neat is they're mini twos. I call them mini twos
I
because
do too. Hmm.
they don't act like any other parrot, but they act just like a cockatoo. All the good parts of the cockatoo, that's what a cockatiel is. They're snuggly, they're independent. You don't have to worry about behavior problems. They talk. Everything that you would like in a cockatoo, you get in a cockatiel.
The one thing I like about cockatiels, budgies, which are actually better talkers. The budgies can have a much larger vocabulary than the cockatiel, but budgies go about 16 years, so it's kind of like the same lifespan as a dog. And when you invest a lot of emotional attachment to a bird or a dog, and you see them pass so soon, you sometimes feel cheated that you didn't get your emotional money's worth. Whereas cats live longer, and so do cockatiels. Cockatiels, when well treated, will go 24, 25 years minimum. And I have had cockatiels that have gone 30, I'm sorry, 27 and 31 years. And I've read about cockatiels that have gone 35 years.
Wow.
Wow.
If you must get a cockatoo, consider a goffins. Now, goffins are much more needy than cockatiels, but one of the things about having a smaller parrot is that should something go wrong and the bird needs to be rehomed, it is a much a wider populace of people who would be willing to adopt a cockatiel or a Guffin's cockatoo than would be capable of adopting something as large as an umbrella
Yes.
or a
And
leadbetter.
be and before she got sick, because Goffins are small, we were able to take Tika on vacations because we could haul around. Yeah, the cage is big, but it was doable.
A cockatiel is not going to snap your finger also. I've heard stories of cockatoos, the larger cockatoos, who can break the bones of a child's finger. And it's not like the child is hurting the bird. It's just, young children don't know how to treat these large birds, and it sometimes spooks the bird, and the bird's reaction is to bite. And quite frankly, if you see some of the nuts, the shells that these larger cockatoos can chomp through, think about your bones. So,
Yeah,
and also think about your
Well,
homes, because, if a cockatiel chews a little bit of molding, it doesn't take much to repair. If a cockatoo chews up your molding, that's a whole nother story.
yeah, the it is said that a cockatoo's bite is that of 550 pounds per square inch minimum and can go up to towards 700.
When they
they
want
can
to
tell you.
bite. They can close their beaks, like when Ken comes home and he reaches out with his finger for Buster. Buster will wrap his beak around Ken's finger, but he's not crushing Ken's finger. He's just
Mm.
grasping on so that Ken will haul him up to his shoulder. So I don't want to scare people off thinking that every time a cockatoo is wrapping its beak around your finger, you're going to lose the finger. That's not necessarily the case. Let me run something by you both and tell me if you agree or disagree. Cockatoos, particularly the larger ones, they will have the intelligence of a human 2-year-old and the emotional development of a human 5-year-old, with all the
Exactly.
gotchas that implies. Meaning that
Uh,
if your cockatoo is outside the cage, you've got to keep an eye on it the same way you would have to keep an eye on a 5-year-old.
And they
I
throw
agree.
tempers. They throw, you
Hmm.
know, you talk about the terrible twos, and the horrible threes. That's
Oh, the emotional meltdowns.
yeah, yeah. You say
And
no, they get angry, they hold grudges, they try to trick you. If one can act like they're fine, and then when you turn your back, they might go after you.
Rebecca, do you remember the first time we spoke on the phone and I had my guard down and Buster attacked my leg?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. And so, yeah, they're manipulative.
Yeah, they are.
And
They'll act really
and
sweet and reach out
hmm
to you just to bite you
hmm yeah,
if they're mad.
yeah, that's the truth.
Now, Sonny becomes visibly and audibly jealous when you are playing with Ani. Ani is
Yeah,
typically situated in the living room, and Sonny's
right.
cage is in the kitchen. And when Sonny hears you playing with Ani, you can, in your videos, you can hear Sonny screaming for attention from the other side. It's
Yeah,
Sonny doesn't want to be left out of the family stuff. Uh,
right.
do you have the same situation, Jennifer, where if you're spending time with one of your other pets, Buster gets bent out of shape?
Not with me. I mean, Buster just demands all of Ken's time. I do get a lot of comments like Ken's not petting the dogs and things like that, which is not
Wow.
really true. But Ken knows Ken has a nice, calm demeanor, and he just naturally knows I have to, pay attention to Buster first and then pet the dogs. And I think what people fail to remember is that Buster goes to bed fairly early. And I've even showed videos on that where Ken goes out, plays with the dogs, rouse them up, gets them running around, things like that. Earl, is a rescue parrot as well who had a horrific, in my opinion, life. And, he has a lot of behavior issues in his own right. Now, he doesn't attack me or anything of that nature, but his behaviors is more with screams and things of that nature. So I don't believe that Earl's really jealous of Buster too much because a lot of times Earl just wants to be left alone. And Percy, we've only had since November, so I'm still learning so much about him.
People forget too that as a YouTuber, you have a star of the show. So Buster
Hmm.
is the star of the show. And so when you take a movie, it's going to be of him. And that is only 3 minutes of your life. So if it shows us petting the birds and playing with them, but not the other animals, that does not reflect what's going on in real life. It reflects what people want to see. And so we bring that to them. So
Right.
I
Right.
know people worry about Sonny all the time. They ask me because they do hear him screaming. He does chores with me around the house. He eats dinner with us, and then nighttime he gets snuggle time. If I'm working on the computer, which I'm a retired writer, so I really don't anymore much, but he would sit on my shoulder or on the screen, but you don't see that. You don't see that on the videos.
Sometimes you do. I've seen videos that you've taken where Sonny is on Scott's shoulder eating spaghetti with Scott. And Jennifer comes through in your videos that after you've put Buster to bed, you spend a lot of time with Percy one on one.
I actually spend quite a bit of time with Earl as well. We call it floor time. Earl is his feet are deformed, his beak is deformed. He can't fly anywhere but down like a rocket.
Aw,
And so he likes to have floor time. And I can't really let him scroll the floor like Buster does because Earl will actually go after the dog. So it's not a safe scenario. So I spend time with him mostly in a pantry slash bird room area, like their playroom, but I don't always video it because it's kind of like that's my time with him. And he's moving about so much that it's difficult to keep up with him too. Earl gets floor time almost every day. There are times that he doesn't, just like with any bird, there's times something changes, but I spend quite a bit of time with him as well. And like Percy too, I don't always video my time with Percy. It's easier for me to video Buster because he's a willing participant and he loves it. He knows what it's all about, except when I catch him doing a song or a rant now, he does that thing where I get the stink eye and he stops. But a lot of times when I have that special time with Earl and Percy, I don't film it.
You called it stink eye, but cockatoo owners almost universally recognize what you're talking about, and they call it side eye. When the parrot gives
Oh
you
yeah, he
side
does.
eye,
Hmm.
that's sending you a message.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Buster has unique pets of his own. What's with the hens?
What's with the what?
The
Hens.
chickens,
Oh, the
the,
chickens,
the girls. Yeah.
the girls, the ladies. Buster's a
Okay.
ladies' man.
Oh,
He
okay.
is. I mean, there are videos I've seen where Buster visits the ladies. They're in a pen outside in your backyard, and Buster Ken will take Buster out there, and Buster will
Hmm.
hang out with the birds, and he interacts with them.
Oh, he talks to them. He's told them he loves them. He'll sometimes sing them one of his little original songs, and it's quite cute. I
Seems
don't
like
know.
he
Maybe
really
it's
looks forward to it.
he does. He does. I mean, honestly, even when Ken's not home, I have to be very careful about opening the back door because he'll take off and want to go out there to them. He likes the trampoline as well, but there's been like today, he was looking outside at him because it's been cold the last few days and he hasn't been able to be out. So he looks forward to that and he totally understands what we're talking about, when we talk about the ladies. But I mean, he just naturally took to them when we got them. And it's funny, they'll come running about to him even. And they don't really do that so much with Earl. Uh, maybe it's Buster's size, in comparison, he's bigger than Earl for sure.
We call
But yeah,
Ani the big fancy white crested chicken.
hmm I call him the dinosaur.
Oh
Just
yeah. That's
yeah,
that's more appropriate.
yeah, because of the bite.
Yeah.
How about we swing into the behaviors of your birds, which are amazingly different. There's a virtually zero comparison between Ani and Buster when you look at the videos. Buster is quite the talker, even when he's with you and not Ken, more so with Ken. I guess when Ken comes home, Buster loves to tell Ken all about his day. But even with you, Buster just doesn't seem to shut up unless he's playing with a scrub daddy. And you actually invite your viewers to decipher what Buster is saying and put that into the comments.
And he's always been like that. He's now, when we first got him, he was much more animated and his language was much more colorful. He definitely was around someone who argued quite a bit at the airport or Action Park. Yeah, I don't know if he maybe lived in Jersey or I'm not sure, but
I was going to
um,
say,
no, I've met a lot of nice people actually over the Action Park. I didn't know about Action Park, by the way. Like I just was listening in the headphone and kept hearing this Action Park, which you clearly can hear him talking about. I thought what he meant was there was action at the park, like somebody got in a fight or something of that nature. But now that we know more about it and some of the other words that he said along with it, someone definitely talked about Action Park in front of him.
Action
So he
Park
did.
was an amusement park in New Jersey in the 70s and 80s, and I think it got bought out in the 90s, but I don't think it's around anymore.
no, it eventually shut down. There were some safety issues that were going
uh,
on.
Action Park shut down, but it is owned by another company now. But the rides are gone. It's a resort now. So technically, it still lives, but the rides are gone.
Huh.
It's a resort style now.
Okay.
But Buster
That's what
represents
the
himself
documentary
as an
said.
employee of Action Park. That's where he goes to work,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, and that's what he talks about lawsuits and he's going to sue. Like a lot of these things that come together that especially after I watched the documentary of Action Park, it was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense
I
now.
would like to see that. Maybe you can point me to the way to that
Yeah,
sometime.
there's several on there, but HBO Max has a really good one.
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
also assuming that that's where Buster got a lot of his colorful language. It's for adult ears. But yeah, he did talk a lot about work work. All I do is work, 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 and checks and money, you know, and yell and scream. And so I do believe somebody did argue quite a bit around him. But he still likes to drop a good rant with all these collective things going on in that bird brain of his that he's heard in his life, or whether it be television, us, other people, radio, you know, music. It, he just starts spitting out these facts.
Do you ever hear him talking before you wake him up in the morning?
Um, so actually, I'm surprised that I haven't heard him because I'm 2 rooms over. But occasionally, if he hears me a little bit, it'll wake him up just a tad, and he'll say something. But like, if I have to go out to the kitchen area and he hears us shut the door, sometimes he'll rant. I have quite a few videos of him ranting at night from time to time. But during the time change, I don't know if you guys remember those videos, but my birds absolutely just lose their minds during the time change. It just sets them all. It's like the world is off its axis.
You mean
I'm not
when it
even joking.
turns, you mean when nighttime
Yes.
comes? Yeah.
No,
Yeah, daylight
during the
No?
daylight
time
savings
change.
time, and
Daylight savings.
that's part of this
Ah.
thing I told you about these. I mentioned earlier about how these birds are very much creatures of habit, and any subtle disturbance to their rhythm can really get them upset.
Hmm.
Rebecca, I promised to get back to you, but I do want to go full circle with Buster's behaviors. So we know about his chattiness, his talking.
Hmm.
And when Ken is, at least from what I can observe from your videos, when Ken is around, Buster's behavior is primarily reciting everything that happened during the day to Ken. So it's all talky, talky,
Oh.
talky, talky with Ken. But with you, he exhibits a mixture of behaviors, part of which is the talking, but he's also very playful with scrub daddies and Swiffer
Hmm.
sticks. Tell me about that stuff. Did he do that the day you brought him home?
No. So I learned very quickly that though I will say this, he's never been very interested in traditional parrot toys. And so, and I'm, you know, I raised 8 children, so I'm always looking for a good deal. And so I started seeing things, you know, at yard sales, Goodwill, or whatever, that I thought, huh, well, this is a wooden block, the same as what would be on a parrot toy, but it's bigger. So I very quickly started turning to those things anyway. And he just really took to that. But the scrub daddy thing, as far as I can remember, so he used to do what I called chores with me. And I would fold laundry and he wanted to help or whatever. He would toss them around and he just started taking to my scrub daddies. And I mean, well, he cockatoos them, he destroys them. So then it got to where I would buy him his own and say, these are yours, these are mine. But of course, then like a kid, he wants the ones I have.
It makes
And then
sense
he
that he
just
would want human things instead of toys, doesn't it?
it does now. It didn't as I didn't quite understand it as much then. But then he started like integrating these things into brushes. He's obsessed with brooms and dustpans, dustpan brushes and brushes that you scrub your sink with. And now, I mean, granted, to me anyway, he wants those things because they're mine and he wants to take them from me. That's my thoughts on it. But he also does enjoy playing with them. I mean, it's clear. You guys have seen, I know.
It's
It's clear.
hysterical. There are videos that you have of Buster literally pulling a mop or pulling a broom across the kitchen floor,
Oh
sweeping
yeah.
from side to sliding. I don't mean sweeping like a human would sweep. I mean sliding it from side to side because he can't really pick it up. But he seems to be imitating behavior that he's seeing
Hmm.
just the best way that he can. And it's hysterical to watch.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to start a fundraiser for shop vacs though, because I'm on my like third shop vac since I've gotten them.
Now, Rebecca,
Uh,
Ani's behaviors are very different. Ani will do, Ani does talk a little bit. He speaks his special language. What is that language?
Anish,
Anish.
because I can't make out what he's saying. All I know is he just strings together consonants and vowels, making his own words. Sometimes I think maybe I'm just stupid that I can't understand the words he's saying, but I don't know. Nobody else has been able to understand him. He
Well,
used to rant a lot like Buster, but
his physical behaviors are different. I had mentioned
yeah,
this thing that I call happy feet. I don't know what you call it. I'm going to ask you to describe it in just a minute. But he also is fascinated by some of these toys that you bring home that are children appropriate. For instance, one of the toys I saw him studied, intensely, was this piece of wood with flippy open doors and that sort of thing. And the beauty of it, it had these clasps and hinges and other metal hardware. And Ani, you could almost hear the gears turning in his brain. He wasn't just playing with these things, he was learning how to operate them.
right, right. Yeah,
And
all his toys just about are children's toys. Bird toys he just destroys so quick. I mean, you can't afford that, so you either have to make your own or maybe you're lucky like us to where, the cockatoo likes children's toys.
now Ani is kind of a jailbreaker, isn't he? He's figured out how to operate the clasps of this cage.
Yep, which is not too unusual, but what is
Mm-mm.
unusual is he can unscrew tight screws. He's got some screws that are the size of eyeglass screws that are embedded deep inside of like a lock. And somehow he's able to use the tip of his beak and get it in there and unscrew it. We've had to get Loctite and put that on every bolt around the cage. And even then, sometimes he'll finally get one loose.
It's not like it's just a random thing or
No,
where he gets lucky. You see him, he loosens it, and then he keeps rotating the screw in the same direction all the way until it falls out. The bird is thinking.
yeah.
What other behaviors have I not mentioned?
His happy feet, going back to that, I call him tappy, stompy feet because it sounds like he's tap dancing if he's on a hard surface, and it sounds like he's stomping when he's on the carpet. And what that is when he was little, he kind of liked to hear his nails go across the table. And my son, Sean, took his hands and patted them like he was drumming on the table. And Ani mimicked that. And so pretty soon it got to the point where by cue we taught him how to tap dance. So all we have to do is tap our hands and Ani will do his tap dancing across the floor.
When I first saw it in your videos years ago, I wrote in the comments, "Oh my goodness, he knows how to do flamingo dancing." Jennifer, you had a question for Rebecca?
I did back to the him well, I know cockatoos are known as goats, and literally goats are escaped artists as well. I've owned them, and they escape quite often. We had a couple of them that constantly got out. Actually, one of them just finally moved to another farm because he just didn't want to live at our place anymore. um Earl's quite good, even with his scissor beak, at getting his latch loose. I have the clamp that screws on, and he's gotten out a few times. I just was wondering if that's one of my biggest fears, is that that will happen when I'm not home. I mean, I'm home a lot, don't get me wrong. It's almost
No,
never a
I know what you mean.
situation,
Yeah,
but
it's a
that is
fear with
one.
us to the point we
Mhm,
have security cameras all around the home for dual reasons. One is for theft because these birds are stolen so much, and the other is
mhm.
just for us to keep track of him because we do have that fear of him getting out.
I also have video cameras for similar reasons. And that's why I've been so quiet about even my name and my location and such too.
Yeah.
Now, Ani has one other behavior, which is he goes out with you just about everywhere you go and does what you do, including playing Pokemon.
That's right.
So tell us about how you get Ani set up and prepared to explore outdoors so that you're not worried he's going to fly away.
Well, he has his own backpack, and we have in that backpack some paper towels, some food, a water bottle that's also a mister for when it's hot, and his flight harness, his flight suit. He has two, so that way he can go into public. The harness is just what it sounds like. It's a harness for when he's outside. The flight suit is a large suit that wraps around his body, and you can put a diaper into it. So that way he can be in stores and such. And so, yeah, when he plays Pokemon, he actually plays it. He actually goes down to the screen of the phone and uses his tongue to try to manipulate what he's seeing on the screen, such as the Pokemon balls. I have a saying called think outside of the cage, which means I believe that all your pets should have enrichment. And I believe that they should have time outside of the cage, whether it's to feel the grass beneath their toes and breathe in the fresh air, or to go out with a family.
Jennifer and Rebecca, are your birds clipped?
Yes. And I
Ani is
mean,
clipped.
I know this is a controversial topic.
That's why we both fell silent.
I'm shaking I'm shaking my hands here, rubbing my hands together.
Yeah.
So here I go. So we did try quite extensively to allow Buster to fly. When we first got Buster and we took him to the vet and he had his nails trimmed and all that good stuff, the techs and the vet and these people came in asking me all kinds of questions. So they felt like his wings looked like they had been burnt. I cannot confirm or deny that, but I had to explain to them, like, well, I just got him about a week ago, and he explained, and we have a great relationship now, but like the first encounter, it was kind of like, wow, they wanted to
Yeah.
make sure I wasn't mistreating this bird. But anyway, we did try a couple of times. A couple of people got hurt over it. My face, it's a good thing I raised 8 children. I was able to duck quickly. He also will he never can fly gracefully. It's never correct. If you get what I mean? So he's flown into windows. He about knocked himself out one time. He did get out and got on top of the roof. I mean, you guys know, when you listen to my videos, I live on a very busy road. So we came to the conclusion that it's not safe for Buster to not be clipped. And I mean, people really need to realize he's on the floor 80% of the time anyway.
Yeah, these
Even when we
birds
were,
like to forage. They don't fly for fun. They fly to get place to place so they can forage for food. It's not like a hawk or something that just likes to cruise the skies. They don't do that.
or they're flying to attack you. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
my take on it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we have Ani clipped for the same exact reasons. At
Hmm.
first I had a mild clip so that he could fly, but if he were to get outside, he wouldn't be able to fly up an 80-foot tree or fly a mile away. So that way he was safe, because to me, nothing would be worse than to die cold and alone and maybe attacked by a dog or to go hungry.
Hmm.
But now we should have him fully clipped because he is dangerous. But
Hmm.
I so ambivalent about it because, like you said, there's so much criticism and it gets me all confused of what I should do.
Hmm. I'd like to get more into that if that's okay too.
Yeah, please.
But first, I want to say we clip Buster for his safety and ours, and my face thanks him for that. Like the last time we went, I flat out told her, he cannot fly. My face is not safe. He cannot fly. He becomes extremely aggressive. I'm talking, it's to the extreme. I know why he's been rehomed. I know. And the same thing, you get all this stuff on the internet. And, I recently watched a channel. I don't even remember the name of the channel. It's a newer channel. And they said birds were meant to fly. Well, birds were also meant to live in the wild. But Buster never had that opportunity. He was hatched in a house. And why he does have some instincts, Buster wouldn't be able to live one day outside by himself. There's no way. So, and also, I don't have the place for him to fly. I'm not downing anyone that lives in a situation where your parrot can fly. That is awesome. And that is the best thing for them. I agree. But you also have to understand that we are having them live in a home. We don't have access for them to free fly and such. And it then becomes a different behavior where it's an angry behavior. Listen, I don't live in the desert with staff and where my birds can free fly all over the place. That's not my life. And I applaud those that do live like that. But for those same people to tell me my bird should be able to fly is wrong as well.
I want to amplify one of the points that you made, which is that in the wild, the young birds stay with the parents for a long time. They learn which trees are the ones that bear the proper fruits, what to eat, what to stay away from, because there are poisons out there. There are barks and things that they shouldn't be chewing.
Mhm.
That is learned behavior. The birds are very imitative and they pay attention to what their parents teach them. When you get a store-bought bird or a rehomed bird, you are acquiring a bird that doesn't have that experience. It would be
Right.
helpless outside. And what's worse, it's that it's not smart enough to know that it doesn't
Mhm.
know how to cope outside. So even though you might find some videos, and there are videos on YouTube of called free flight, where people will go to
Mhm.
parks and free flight these birds, you need to understand the fine print, which is that these birds are not being taken from a store and then taken to a park and allowed to free flight and the birds circle around and come back. No, that's not the way it works. There is a lot of training that goes into taking a pet store bird or a rehome bird and turning it into a bird who can be reliably free flighted. And that's a lot of work to do. And you
Mhm.
can't just do it anywhere. The bird has to get used to the landmarks. What I wanted to do is close this first segment with some discussion of what Ani's going through, Rebecca. You have mentioned already the University of Tennessee, and you did that with Tika, but recently you've done that with Ani as well. Can you bring us up to speed on what that's all about?
Yes, well, it's natural, it's normal behaviors. I think Jennifer had said before, much earlier in the broadcast, that a male umbrella cockatoo, they're cocky, they're full of it, and they can be bullies, they can be aggressive. It's not a rare thing. And so when they go through puberty, it really is magnified. Ani is 8.5 years old. He is still in puberty, and his behavior had gotten so bad and so dangerous that he started to have to be in his cage a lot, to the point where he was only getting out maybe 2 hours a day. And that just wasn't acceptable to me. And it was getting worse and worse, and he was dangerous. And he seemed, most importantly, he looked angry all the time. To me, that looked miserable. And so nothing was working that we ever tried, any of the conventional things. And so we brought him to the University of Tennessee Exotic Medicine Center. And they had said that his hormones are just absolutely raging. And so they put an implant of dyslorelin in up on his back and between his wings. And what that does is it suppresses his hormones and calms him down. And it has worked like a charm. His aggression, he was frustrated and showing a lot of sexual behavior. That's all gone. His aggression's still kind of there. And so we are giving him medicine to try and calm that down. And that is, it's taken an edge off, but we still have a ways to go. We have a lot of tweaking of the medicines and a lot of vet visits and to figure this out.
So far, is everything going okay?
Yeah, he's no sexual behavior at all, which is really nice for him. No frustration. So the implant did its job. as far as being aggressive or losing his temper or being a bully or any of that, that's still quite bad, but an edge has been taken off by the medicine. I think the product's name's Neurontin. I don't remember what the real chemical's name is.
Well, Jennifer and Rebecca, we've come to the end of the first segment. When we come back, we're going to talk about YouTube and birds. So
Yeah.
why don't we wrap this up right
Yeah.
now, and we'll be back for another segment after this message.